Hey, all, Andy here, helping you build a career you love. Welcome aboard to my Thursday show. Live office hours on this somewhat sunny Thursday. Hope you're as excited about watching this as I am delivering it to you. Always like to say hi before I get rolling. Did you notice who was first on the list? Hey, Mom, how are you? Love you. Steve, great to see you. Who Man, Elena, Adam Stark, Rita. Moving forward, Diana, William, oh, good to see you. And Sean and SM and Brian and everybody else, great to have you. Let me know where you're watching from. We are going to do some questions and answers after the teaching portion of today. Put some question marks in front of your questions and let me know what you need. Anything goes. I'm going to be talking with you today about some, I think these are some perspectives. We can call them truths if you'd like. They're truths to me. I certainly don't own them. You can't own a truth, but they're kind of some tenets I live by, and perspective checks that keep me in order, that continually remind me. And I thought a couple of weeks ago that I thought this would just be such a great topic to share with you. And I'm really hoping it'll open your eyes, maybe change your perspective, and ultimately help you take on challenges that you might not otherwise take on. But now, having these perspectives, it might ignite you to get going, pursue something that you might not have otherwise pursued, or even if you had to pursue it, maybe do it with more vigor, confidence, and hopefully get some better outcomes. So I want to run through these 7. I think they're really good. It's a really detailed look into how I operate and how I think about everything that I do. So I want to get right into these. And the first one has to do with our resources. And I want to tell you kind of where I really started thinking about this was about 20 years ago. It was in the mid 2000s, and I was working with a client. Milewalk, my executive recruitment firm, was recruiting for this company. They were a technology company, and they did a lot of work in behavioral analytics. They actually would work with organizations to help their organizations improve their customer service and sales and other things by recognizing people's personality types, knowing what to say to them, when to say it, how to say it, what buttons to push, so to speak. And I learned a lot about behavioral analytics, and I learned about personality types. And for the purposes of this point, the different personality types isn't really what's at play here, as much as it is the main message is that people will return to their natural default settings, call it whatever you want, their core DNA. They become closer to their Myers-Briggs personality, or whatever you want to call it, when their resources are depleted, when they're under stress, when they're under duress. And you will, the thought process, the mechanics of being able to think through what you're doing and filter what you want to say and filter the way you behave, completely, your defenses are gone. And so what I want to share with you about this first point is everything that you do in your life and everything that you do with someone else, or challenges you want to take on, or when you want to schedule something, or when you want to pursue it, I always want you to keep these 3 resources in mind, because it's going to tell you a lot about how you're going to do and how your interactions will go. We all have the same 3 resources. Now, we don't have them to the same levels, but everybody from a human standpoint deals with these all the time. It's time, energy, and money. Okay, time, energy, and money. So when you think about everything that you do, everything from how somebody is going to behave later in the day, we behave a little bit differently than we might behave earlier in the day when we have more energy, right? And so sometimes y'all that are job searching ask me, Andy, well, when should I schedule my interview? Should I go first in the morning or last at the end of the day? To which I might say, let's think about this. I'd want you to do both. Meaning, if I'm going to schedule an interview with somebody and I'm going to interact with them, early in the interview process, if I have the luxury of doing this, I would select something early in the morning. I'd love to talk to the hiring official when the hiring official is fresh, open-minded, probably hasn't run into a lot of things throughout the day to ruin his or her day. And I'm going to score points, and I want to start racking up those points as early in the interviewing process as possible. But to make a great decision as a job seeker about whether this company is the right one for me or whether I want to work with this particular boss, I want to think about time and energy as it relates to, well, when I'm actually working with this person, what is their core DNA like? I want to meet with them later in the day where they might even have a little more time because they might not have appointments after you meet with them. Maybe you're their last, their last session or their last meeting, but they're probably going to be a little bit more tired. And I'd rather do that later in the process where I could get a really good look at what this person would be like to behave when their resources are depleted. And so I think about everything that I do in terms of time, energy, and money. And for those of you that have taken my productivity challenge, my full on productivity and organization course, I've even talked with you about how I schedule my day and I align my activities based on whether it fuels my energy, whether it takes it away, or whether it's kind of neutral, and the things that I need to do in order to make sure that I maintain my energy levels to coincide with what it is that I want to accomplish at any moment in time throughout the day. But think about all of these things and everything that you do, because I think that, and when I talk about depleting resources and I talk about being under stress, I'm talking about the everyday walking around, the natural draining of these resources that occurs as we go through our days. I'm not talking about somebody being under duress because their husband is sick or their wife is sick, but think about everything you do in terms of time, energy, and money, and think about the other person, that the other person will be dealing with these three resources at any moment in time. The more you know about where they are in these resources, the more effectively you'll be able to interact with them. Everything I do, I think about these three things. All right, so that was item number one. So just think about this. Now, item number two. This is where I think school, at least for us in the U.S., but I'm pretty sure this is the same worldwide. School royally screwed you when it came to shaping this thing up here, when it comes to starting a new project, taking on a new initiative, because I think school has ruined so many people because they've become reluctant, because it's been ingrained within them since they were 5 years old that 90% was an A, right? And we want to do well, or 80% was a B, or 85, or whatever it was. And that most people will not start new challenges or start new projects until they feel like they're 90% ready, because then they're not even confident that they'll be able to accomplish it. And don't even get me started on, well, I need to see all the steps before I take the first steps. And I'm not going to do that because I'm not really sure how I do all 25 of those steps. But so what I would say to you is, anytime I want to undertake something, I have a pretty low bar for me for when I'm going to start. I start at 51%. My goal line is, do I know 51%? Can I do it to 51%? Do I have 51% of the skills required? And the reason I do this is because I know through experience and over and over and over again that you are better off getting in motion, because after you take the first step in doing something where you've brought something to actual life, I'm not talking about academics here, I'm talking about real world experiences. I didn't know anything about putting an online training product together. I knew how to shoot a video and I knew how to give some lessons. I'm thinking that's good enough. I didn't know how to market it, but we're going to start building it. I'm halfway there, because once I get it up and running, I can learn a lot of these other things on the fly. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about putting an airplane together, right? That has to operate at hopefully 100%, right? All systems got to be go. I need you to get me to my destination safely on time, or the medical devices that you're pulling together. I'm talking about 99% of you, 99% of the time, because when you get something up and living and breathing, you're going to be so much smarter. When my product was in the hands of my customer, they could tell me so much more about it, the efficacy of it. I could learn so much more about how to market it. I can't learn how to market something I haven't built yet, kind of thing. So, there's kind of a funny thing. Jeff Bezos has this thing. I'm going to tell you what it is, and I like it and I don't like it. And I'll tell you why I like it, and I'll tell you why I don't like it. Jeff Bezos has this rule. So Amazon head, super rich guy. And he says, I've got this 70% rule that if I have 70% of the information, I make a decision and go. Now, I like what he's saying conceptually. And if what he's saying conceptually were actually true, I would think it is great. But what I really think is funny about that is that we never know what 70% is, because what we know about anything we're deciding is only what we know, as silly as that sounds. There are blind spots. 70%, I don't know if it's 70% or if I only actually have 20% of the information. And as a matter of fact, the real weird thing about this is the less you know about something, the more encompassing you think your knowledge is. The more you know about something, the less encompassing you think your knowledge is, right? The more skilled I become at something, the more I realize what I don't know and how much more there is to know, right? The novice thinks they know a greater percentage. Now, what I would say to you about Jeff Bezos's rule is it isn't the percentage of information, it's what information you have. Do you know a few things about how to get started, and do you understand what the risks are? Because if you understand what the risks are and you've spent more time evaluating those, then understanding what the potential outcomes can be based on external factors that you cannot control, but you could try to mitigate, you can put contingency plans together, and if you are comfortable and you feel you're halfway there or 3/4 of the way there, you go. And the other thing that I want to do is I want to dovetail this into the actual next point where we talk about accelerators and skills, because if I get something up living and breathing, your experience and your knowledge in doing something is going to grow exponentially versus when you're trying to do it at your desk, blueprinting it like an academic inside an office with 4 walls and no windows. So when you got something living and breathing, you can actually work skills that actually matter, because if you actually think in terms of growth, and I'm sure you've seen this formula before, but if you actually got 1% better at doing what you were doing each day for a year, that's 365, which you probably cannot, that log right there, you're 37, almost 38 times better in the course of the year. If you were 51% good enough to do something where you were creating a minimum viable product, as I like and many others like to call them, right? Get it up, living and breathing, and get it working, right? Work with it, whether it's a process you're putting together for your team, or it's a prototype for your customer, or whatever it might be. But if you think about actually improving, now you have to think about, well, okay, well, what are the steps to improve? Let me give you an example. I scratched the talk for this live show. And on Monday, as I normally do, I have a standard clock for everything that I create. A live show like this is like on a 3-day clock. On Monday, I scratch my points. I want to talk to them about these truths that I use to operate my life to create a lot of what I hope is valuable information for the world. On Monday, I scratched down what are the 5 or 7 points or so that I want to tell them. And I just wrote them down. And that only took me 1 minute. And then on Tuesday, I said, okay, I'm going to kind of fill in the talk. That's what I do on Tuesday. I have a little slot on my calendar, and it's usually 30 minutes or less. This particular talk only took me 8 more minutes total. I know that because I started doing it at 2:50 on Tuesday or whatever it was, and I was done well before 3 o'clock. And I actually scratched in what the points were and kind of what the analogies were. So it took me about 9 minutes to put this talk together. Then yesterday, I was on my bike in my basement, and I was doing an indoor ride because the air quality where I live apparently was the worst in the world, apparently. And I had about 20 minutes left in the ride. I thought, all right, you know what? I'm gonna kind of talk through my talk for tomorrow. And so I didn't even get to talk through the whole talk. So a lot of what I'm saying today is going to be the first time I'm ever hearing it come out of my mouth. But there were a few points in the talk that I kind of went through and just made sure that I understood what that sounded like and whether that was a good example and so on. And did that sound normal? It took me 18 minutes. All right, so now we're under 30 minutes. Now I'm going to give you the talk. The talk's going to take 30 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever the talk's going to take. So let's just call it an hour for simple math. So between Monday and today, I wrote the thing, I filled it in, I practiced it, and I'm delivering it. That takes an hour out of my week. All right. Now, I'm going to spend time today and tomorrow and probably on Saturday rewatching this. I'm going to spend 3 times the amount of time that it took me to write it, fill it in, practice it, and deliver it I'm going to spend 3 times the amount of time reviewing what I did. For what? What purposes? To get better. Did I hit the right notes? Did I say it as fast as I could? Did I deliver it with inspiration? Did I choose the right examples? Right? Could I do it without notes? Can I, right? So on and so forth. And part of that is all the things that I want to get better at are what? I want to get better at the ideas. I want to get faster at writing it. I want to get smoother at delivering it. I want to be able to remember it 100% without actually having to, rehearse most of it, and so on and so forth. But what do most people do? They spend 3 hours writing it, 3 hours rehearsing it, and 0 minutes evaluating it. So if you want to get better, the better you get at something, the more adept you get at something. I've been showing up every Thursday since 2018, January, right? That's 5+ years of doing this live show regularly. And I was even doing it before that, but not as regularly. So to get 1% better is a lot harder the more you do this. So for some of you that are novices, you're going to get much better very quickly, right? 51%, you got a lot of room for growth. You can go and you'll learn fast. Those of you that have been doing something for a while, you have to spend more time in the evaluation mode if you want to wring out that last little bit of those 1% each day. All right. So I always think about that. The other thing I think about, and I want to engage you right now, because this one, I was thinking about this. I was coaching somebody a couple of weeks back, and I think networking is a big thing. And I think the people accelerator aspect of your life is really important. I know a lot of you here at the show that show up each week are job searchers and looking to develop your careers. Those are the things I talk about, right? But maybe you're a salesperson. You want to improve your network so you can sell. Maybe you're a marketer, all those kind of things, right? And maybe you need your friend to refer you in for a job. Maybe you need to talk to your neighbor to find a plumber, whatever it is, right? I want to get a show of hands right now. Actually, would you think about this, but don't go in the chat just yet. The next question, I want you to go into the chat. Just think for a second. Just think. Do you think, you don't have to answer me, just think about, do you think you have a healthy network? Okay. So for any of you that don't think so, I want to do a little experiment here. Would you agree, show of hands, just type yes, the word YES in the chat, if you feel like you have or will meet 1,000 people over the course of your professional life. Okay. I'm connected to like 45,000 people on LinkedIn. I know a lot of them, and a lot of them I don't, because I'm an open networker, but there's 45,000 people right there that I know I'm connected to. Now, I come from an Italian family. I know 1,000 people on my mother's side. So it's not really hard for me. But would you say that you know 1,000 people? Type yes if you do. Type no if you don't think you'll ever meet 1,000 people in the course of your life. People you worked with, friends from college, friends from high school. I had 242 guys that graduated in my graduating class. I had 365 that started, right? So yes. Sean says yes. William, we have a no in there. Steve Green, yes. Loretto, yes. Gloria, yes. Reggie, oh, look at all my boot campers right there running the table. So anybody else? Yes, Michael. Yes, Ivan. Yes, Judith. Potato doesn't think so. Cynthia Kane sure does. Okay. Now, get your calculators out if you need it. I punched the numbers for you. If you know 1,000 people, and I know 1,000 people, are you not only one call away from 1 million people? Are you not? That's the math. 1 million. You are one call. Your 1,000 and my 1,000. You know your 1,000. You can call me to get to my 1,000. What is that? 1 million. You're one call away from 1 million. But here's the really wacky number. You're 2 calls away from what? 1 billion people. Forget 6 degrees of separation. You are 2 calls away from 1 billion. There's only 8 billion people in the world, right? If you can think of 1,000 people, you're 1 call away from 1 million people. Do the math. You're 1 other call away from 1 billion. 1,000 to the million is 1 billion. There's only 8 billion people in the world. And most of them live in a planet or live on the other side of the planet in faraway lands, and you probably don't even need to know them. It's only 300 and some odd million people in the US. right? So I want you to think about this. So next time you say to me or yourself, I don't have a network, I'm going to say you're one call away from 1,000,000 people, right? I have told you about my Ariana Huffington story, right? When I was earlier on in my career coaching career, and I wanted to, put my work on the Huffington Post because they had a platform where you could submit your articles. And someone on my staff, I said to her, Rhonda, I want you to put this article into the Huffington Post, one a day, every day until we get a response. 30 days goes by, we had no responses, and I don't know, having lunch with somebody, and I was telling this story. I was kind of laughing at myself. I said, I feel like my job seeking community who shoves their resume into the ATS and doesn't get any responses, and we start giggling. And then I was like, I always tell them to just boss hunt. I should just email Ariana Huffington, which I did on a Thursday in the evening. And Friday morning, I woke up to an email that said, I sent a message to her directly, told her I was, all gaga over her and her platform and wanted to contribute because I wanted to help more people. And she got back to me right away and said, Andy, we'd love to feature your voice on the Huff Post. I'm copying, Madeline, the editor, and so on. And Madeline, 3 minutes later, emailed me and said, Andy, here's your name, password. Go in here. This is how you do it. Knock your socks off. And that was a Friday. And then I put a message out. And then Saturday morning, nearly 10,000 people had read an article and downloaded something from me. And so, boom, boom, right kind of thing. And so I need this to register. I need this to register. This is fact. It's fact. You might not believe it, but that has more to do with the fact that you're not putting in the effort, right? Okay, this is there. This is there. Okay, now I want to go the other direction. We waste a lot of time. There's two kinds of waste. There's a lot of kind of waste, but let's just strip it down for purposes of Andy talk. There's two kinds of waste. There's the kind you notice and the kind you don't. Okay? Or what I like to call kind of your outflow or your inflow or your moving or non-moving waste. Let's talk about this. Waste accelerators. I want you to think about this. Every day I ask myself, what should I stop doing? And I cut waste. I cut. All right? But I want you to think about outflow, moving. A lot of you shoving resume into the applicant trashing system. Every day you're shoving your resume into those dang things, and what? You're not getting any results. But Andy, I'm working really hard on my job search. Yeah, at the wrong thing. You're burning a lot of time. You have outflow, moving waste. Okay, that's what that is. All right, you are the person who is buffing the handle of the axe, right? But then you want to go chop the tree down, and you wonder why it's not falling because the axe ain't sharp. You're working on the wrong end of the stick, so to speak, right? That's the moving part. You got to make sure you're focusing on, am I working on the right things, or am I wasting a lot of time because even though I'm working hard, I'm working on the wrong things? If you don't question what you're doing or the results or why you're getting it or why you're not, you're never going to know. But let's go the other way, which I think is even funnier, because we don't detect this either. But this is the kind of stuff where, show of hands, right? You binge watching the TV shows. You get this sucker, and you're surfing your Facebook and your TikTok and your whatever. You wasting time on end, right? And I'm all for levity and I'm all for fun. But I don't know about you. I spend 90% of my waking hours doing one thing: taking in information. Okay? Watching TV, taking in information. Reading a blog post, taking in information. Right? Reading something, taking in information. Talking to your spouse, taking in information. Right? Talking to my dogs, I'm taking in information. Right? Kind of thing. Everything is coming at me. I'm writing an article, I might be researching, taking in information. Writing an article, I'm still thinking. I'm thinking about information. Okay. So we have to be very careful about the information that feeds this thing. You want to feed this thing down here, right? Your tummy, right? Your stomach, the diet, right? You feed it crappy food, you get chubby, right? Well, you feed this thing bad information or wasteful information, you either grow more slowly, or you grow poorly, or you grow in a bad direction. Okay. So I don't know that I've never said this ever. I was trying to think back in the Andy archives of the millions of hours that I talk, and I've never told you this about how I take information in. Now, I have told you that I don't watch the news and I don't read the news. Not that way, because I don't like what's being fed to me, the way it's being fed, and the news itself is, it's not a public service thing. They're in business to make money. What they feed us, our news by its very definition, is exceptional, meaning they're not going to say, oh, there's this guy, career coach Andy's got this Thursday live show, I'm just going to report that on the news. No one cares, right? What do they care? Murders here, blow up there, right? What you're getting is the tip of exceptionally bad information, right? If it bleeds, it leads. So what I do is I curate all of the information that I would like to take in. And I curate the sources of that information, and I get my iPad or my computer or whatever, my phone or whatever, and I use Apple News and some other stuff, and I curate the sources. But that isn't the most important thing I want to tell you, because that I have shared with you before. When I think about the information that I take in, I'm gonna generalize it into two buckets. One, when I see a headline, I'm gonna open up an article. When I open up the article, I don't start reading the article, because if I started reading the article, I might waste time starting to read something I don't want to read. So I don't read the article. I open the article, I take it, and I scroll through it. Okay? And what am I looking for? I'm trying to ascertain whether what I'm about to take in is something that someone has spent time with and to investigate, to curate information, to draw a conclusion and share it with me. Whether they spent a year to write a book, whether they spent a week researching something to draw some, whether they interviewed a number of experts that gave them insight, whether they gathered data from the sites or whatever, and they're curating it and giving it to me. Now, let's not get into whether I agree with them or not. I'm taking this information in and I consider it valuable because I am leveraging someone else's time that they actually put in to create something that they think is valuable, that I hope is valuable, and I'm now going to look at it. That's one kind of thing that I look at. The only other kind of information that I take in online is news data that supports my vocation. I like to know when the jobs report comes out what the number is. Then I go to the site where I know it's published and I look at unemployment by educational attainment, by age, by demographic, by heritage, by whatever. I want to look at all that stuff. I want to see the trends. I want to know if what you're asking me every week is true or not, or you're being fed the garbage that you're right. Hey, last week before, last month, a few months back, everybody was telling me tech's going to hell. I said, no, it isn't. Now, apparently it's thriving like crazy. According to the stock market, right? What happened to it going like, right? So we pay attention to a lot of noise, makes us feel a certain way. So you not only have to curate this, so your inflow of information has to be properly diced up so that what you're taking in is educating you, feeding you, and keeping you healthy, just like the food that you put in your body, right? Okay, so that's that one. The other thing I want to talk about, next one, is routines. Routine is so important. You got ceilings and you got floors. I said to you in the goal setting masterclass that I created many years ago, right? You might rise to the level of the goal you set, but you will definitely fall to the level of your routine. Okay, right. Your teeth are going to rot if you don't brush them every day, perhaps 2 or 3 times, right? You're not going to be very clean if you don't shower every day, right? What about the diet, right? That's a routine. I have many routines. One of the routines that I have ensures that not only does my performance not drop, but a lot of the routines that I have are set for this. So I don't know that you can see this. I know you can't make it out, but right here, there's a bunch of red ink. And on that red ink are 10 principles that I live every day. And I talk about right? Like making sure that I'm appreciating, right? I don't have expectations, but I appreciate, right? Make sure I'm focused on the right things, make sure I'm responsible for my energy. I have a number of these things. And I have these kind of systems that I use throughout the day. Every morning and many times throughout the day, I look at that list. It's on the front page of my journal. I look at it every morning, first thing, to remind myself. These are things that I've been reminding myself of for 10 years, and I still remind myself several times a day because that's what the routine calls for. Because as frenetic as our lives have become, the amount of things that are coming at us and the amount of demands that we either are being placed on us or that we take on, or all the different distractions that go on, there's a number of things that I need to remember. One of those things is I need to keep my psyche in order. And I think I've told this story once, but one of the things that I do is I reflect. I reflect in between sessions. So when this session is done, I'm going to stop for 5 minutes and I'm going to think about the talk. I'm just going to think about, that was fun. I love that. I might review some things. I won't watch it just yet. I'll probably have lunch and then I need to go into a coaching session, but I'll take a few minutes. And at the end of the day, I probably will have watched this once at least, and I will reflect. On January 11th, 2023, earlier this year, I was in a writing session as I was in the middle of writing the manuscript for my 4th book. That manuscript is done. In January 11th, I was only about 5 weeks into the writing. Every morning I would write for an hour or two. I basically wrote about 14 hours a week. So I spread it across the 7 days. So I wrote every day, no days off. And some days, right, it came very easily. Some days it was really hard. And so on this particular morning, January 11th, I won't forget it because I really struggled. It was a really hard section in the book to write. I felt beaten up. I was drained and I felt like I didn't accomplish anything. And whatever I had written down, it was probably not really good prose. So at the end of that session, before I went into my regular day, I have a writing book. I have a log book. And in the log book, I go in there and I write, here's what I wrote. I wrote this section of the book, how I was feeling, how I thought I did, how many words I wrote, add that to the pile. How many words did I write? So then I go into the Word document, I highlight the section, I look at the words, I wrote 1,440 words in like 90 minutes, okay? Which is probably typical. But it felt like I accomplished nothing. I intercepted myself from going into the next hour, not to mention the rest of my day, not to mention the whole 24-hour period that I was going to have before I was back to the book to redeem myself of doing whatever it was that I thought I did poorly. And once I stopped myself, because I had a routine, to save myself from going through the rest of the day feeling crappy about my morning writing session, and I realized I wrote 1,440 words. Good Lord. I accomplished my goal for the day, which is 1,000 words every single day, right? You write 1,000 words for 100 days in a row, you write a 100,000 word book, right? Kind of thing. And so I was able to keep and be happy and now have something to draw on because I had what? A routine, right? I had a routine. Do you have status meetings every weekend? Do you communicate with your spouse every day? Do you have an exercise regimen? Do you have whatever it is for you? If you don't have these are the greatest safety nets in the world. Not to mention they help you operate more efficiently. Routines. Fall in love with them. And then the last thing I want to say is none of this makes any bit of difference at all unless you have the right success criteria. Okay? This goes to the mindset. The right criteria. Success each day when I wrote was 1,000 words. I didn't just meet my goal, I exceeded it by 44%. Right? And so how we look at the world has everything to do with how we feel. And so I don't think that that's earth-shattering, but there is no good or bad, right? And we're excluding, somebody killing somebody and deaths and all this and sickness and all this. Like the world doesn't know. It doesn't know that my writing session was good or bad. It doesn't even care, right? It just is. So how I choose to look at something. When I launched my first online program, I could have said, I need to make $100,000 on the launch of this product. And if I didn't, then what? That would have been a fail. I didn't make $100,000. I don't know what I made. I didn't make $10,000, I bet, right? But if 50 people bought it, I launched a new product. There's 50 people who paid me. I was able to prove to myself that I could, right, make a sale. Now I can learn from my customers, see how to improve it. I have 50 more people now who are members of the new Mile Walk Academy or whatever it is. I had a coaching session on Wednesday. So yesterday morning, let's call it 26 hours ago. This woman's in Germany and I love her to death. And we do a lot of work together, and we have over the years, and she's found multiple jobs with me. And her company is going through a major acquisition, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and she might need to find a new job, and she's not sure yet, but they've announced that there's going to be a lot of layoffs. So I've been helping her, and she wanted a session with me because she said she was feeling frustrated, and she had gone on this interview for a company that was not on her target company list, and a headhunter or recruiter had called her. She decided this would be good. I should go in and learn about this. And she had 3 other interviews, and she had this one interview, and in a week she got like 4 interviews. She's doing everything that I coach her to do, and we feed the funnel, right? She sends her boss hunting messages out. She gets meetings. She goes and talks to them. She has coffee with them or interviews with them. And she got this one from a headhunter, and she goes to the interview, and she said, Andy, I really would like to talk with you because I don't think I'm doing a good job in interviews, and I'm feeling really frustrated. And they had asked me about my motivation to join the company, and I was really tongue-tied, and I didn't know how to answer this, and so on and so forth. So we get to the coaching session, and I said to her, hey, let me get this straight. In a week, you got 4 interviews, 1 from a headhunter, so 3 on your own. 1 came in as a flyer for a company that you don't even care about, in an industry that you don't really know. And okay, now, when you went to the interview, did you think through, this is great. I got an opportunity to meet a recruiter and add another person in my network. I get a chance to learn a little bit more insight about the communications industry and see what's going on in this sector. I'm going to get a chance to practice my interviewing skills. I'm going to get a chance to prep, learn some new people, learn some new concepts, get ready, maybe answer my questions a little bit differently since I have to shape them because I'm moving from this kind of industry to that kind of industry. And you got an interview, and you developed a relationship with a headhunter, and I went on and on and on and on. And you went there, and let me get this straight. You're concerned because you didn't want to, right? You didn't score well because you didn't answer some questions the way you thought. But now we learned that, and now I'm coaching you with how to handle that forever and ever. Amen. And so I'm thinking this is a raging victory. She's feeling miserable about it. We're looking at the same thing. We're looking at the same scenario, right? My success criteria, or what I hope could be your success criteria, versus how you looked at this. If you're a fish and you judge yourself by how you climb the tree, you know how you're going to feel, right? So your perspective has everything to do with the way you see the world. I tried to say to her, when you're going through something, pay attention to what's going on in you more so than what's happening in front of you. Because now you're recognizing that I didn't dial this up correctly. And this will screw everything that she was doing correctly, right? Because when you're going through it, if you are going through it, you don't know whether you're in a high or a low. You don't know that until you turn around and look back. Except the way you can manage going through it is constantly reminding yourself of what success looks like. And part of being successful in anything that you do is being completely present and focused at any moment in time on what it is you're doing. But if you remind yourself beforehand, these are my goals for the session. This is what I want to know. This is what victory looks like. Meeting the person, developing chemistry, right? Learning more about these, write them all down. Remind yourself. That's the routine. That's the success criteria. So when you look back, if you think about operate your life this way, quick recap, time, energy, and money. Think about new challenges. I want you to get in motion, create minimum viable prototypes. You don't need to be all the way there. In fact, I would hope that you're not, because you're going to learn more faster. You're going to learn more in aggregate throughout your life, because then you're going to be able to work at it a little bit each day and get a little bit better. I want you to remember there's people around that love you, support you, and will help you. You're one call away from 1 million people, 2 from 1 billion. Watch what you're doing and watch what you're taking in. Watch what you're taking in, okay? Inflow and outflow. Make sure you got the routines in order. And for the love of all that is holy, make sure you set up the right success criteria. Hope you loved it. 40 minutes. I am dancing to the right beat, even though that wasn't completely rehearsed. If you enjoyed it, click the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the station if you're watching this on a recording. I'll see you next week. If you're here with me live, we're going to the chat.